whenever I talk to advisors about brand and brand messaging strategy, the first thing that they ask me is, what is that? What's a brand messaging strategy? And I tell them the same thing. Your brand isn't your logo. Your brand isn't your font. It's not your color choices. What your brand is that little nugget of information that's rattling around in a prospect's head after they have forgotten every word that you said. And they will definitely forget 95% of what you say. So what's that 5% that you leave them with? In order to determine what that is and be really intentional about it, you need a brand messaging strategy. And it sounds like this big ephemeral, smoke and mirrors kind of marketing thing, but it's probably the most practical marketing asset that you're ever going to have. And a brand messaging strategy is made up of 5 things. Your value proposition, which is really your offering. What makes you a legitimate advisor? What is it that you offer to your people that makes you different from other folks? Your positioning statement, which is you determining that piece of real estate that you're going to occupy in somebody's brain. Your brand attributes, which is, I call that the decoration. It's the curb appeal, right? It's how you show up. So whether you're talking about comprehensive financial planning or you say something more like whole life financial workout, that's not about what you're offering. It's about how you're saying it to your ideal client persona. And then there's your brand promise, which is that 3 to 7 words, that little bite-sized nugget that you can leave people with that really expresses who you are in a nutshell. Now, in order to get to those 4 things, you need the most important part of a brand messaging strategy, which is your ideal client persona. And that's just really a fictionalized database kind of profile of who your ideal client is. And it goes beyond demographics. It's not just, I'm looking for 50 plus people with 1 million or more under assets who were doctors. It's people who have this worldview. They really enjoy Disney World. They take their coffee black, and they are much more interested in their kids' sports games than they are in showing up in the newest model of the Audi. So figuring out what they care about, what their motivation is, getting that dialed in first is how you get to the rest of the brand messaging strategy. And that's how you can be really intentional about that little nugget that you leave in their minds. When you don't have a brand messaging strategy, what tends to happen, and this is for all companies, not just advisory firms, is you start creating content that doesn't necessarily have a purpose. You just think it's a good idea. Hey, what if we did this? What if we talked about how to choose Medicare Part D? Okay, well, that's cool, but it happens that your ideal client persona is, 45-year-old entrepreneurs. Is that something that's going to be interesting to them? It might be something that, search data is telling you has good organic search behind it, but it's not necessarily aligned to your brand. So from a content planning perspective, your brand messaging strategy saves you a boatload of time, and it just allows you to focus really critically on what it is you're creating. The other cost of not having a brand messaging strategy is that you end up sounding like everyone. There are a lot of financial advisory firms in the world, and there are a lot of financial advisory firms in the world who are working with the same client personas. So it's really important to differentiate. But the secret is there's not a lot of differentiation in the actual services that are offered. I hate to tell people that. Nobody really likes to hear it. But it's how you package those services verbally, how you dress them up, and how you approach it that makes it unique. So when you don't have a brand messaging strategy, you sound like every other advisor down the street who's offering comprehensive financial planning and investment management and tax-adjusted strategies. So you don't want to be that guy. You want to be the one that somebody remembers, and nobody remembers you if you're not very intentional about what you're leaving them with. The best way for an advisor to get started on their brand messaging strategy is to look at their clients, really developing that ideal client persona. And this is something that can really fill people with panic when I say it. The idea of your ideal client. It's either, well, we want to work with everybody who has money. You don't want to work with everybody. You have what I call clonable clients. You have that 2 or 3 or hopefully 15 clients that you adore, that you get energy from working with, that understand the value that you bring to the table and really respond to the work. That's who you want to work with. So take those people. There are 2 ways to start developing your ideal client persona. Take a couple of those clonable people, your favorite, and make what I call the clonable client smoothie, right? Take all the things that those people have in common, throw them into your imaginary blender, and blend those up. And who comes out of it? Who comes out of it? Maybe, they all have in common that they love this particular sports team. They all have in common that they have kids in the same age group. They all have in common that they went to a certain type of college, that they took a certain type of job. There are things that they're going to have in common. There's also going to be quirky little things about each one that you can kind of cherry pick from each clonable client and add that to your smoothie. That's a way to do it that's not exactly database, but you'd be surprised how accurate it gets you to who your ideal client is. Another way to do it if you want something that's a little more database is go ahead and download a CSV file from your CRM of your entire client roster. Take out all the PII, take out names, phone numbers, email, any identifying stuff. Keep in city and the amount in their accounts and how many kids they have and how old they are and their gender and their marital status and their hobbies and all those notes. Keep all of that in there and then go to our very good friend ChatGPT, upload that bad boy and say, pretend you're a data analyst. Go through this and find the patterns and tell me about my average client. Let me know the demographics, the psychographics, what they're interested in, and what their media consumption choices are. You'll be really surprised by what comes back. Will it be perfect? Absolutely not. But what it will do is give you a good idea of your average client. Your average client isn't necessarily your ideal client, but it's a great way for you to start thinking about as you look at it, I would like my ideal client to be different than what this is saying, and then you can create it based on that. It is data-based, but it's not a perfect science, but it's a very good thought starter, and it does take into account exactly who you're working with already.